Welcome to the Society Pod, a podcast for entrepreneurs, marketers, and leaders. Here's your host, Jessica Yarmy.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Society Pod. I hesitate to even try to introduce my guest today because he is a jack of all creative trades. We met through photography on Instagram. I'm going to say I slid into his DMs because of photography on Instagram, and we'll elaborate on that maybe. And here we are today, still connected through brand building, through shared values, through just love of all things positive and living with gratitude and giving things away in a world that seems to really be filled with people who like to take. So welcome to the show, Damien Noble Andrews.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I think the first time we actually spoke on the phone, I was changing the diaper of my oldest kid. And that's 10 years ago or 9 years ago at this point. It went fast. Yeah.
Yeah. The way it went down was not me being creepy with Damien. I reached out to him because I needed a photographer, and I'm connected to a lot of athletes and fitness people online, and I just consistently saw his name popping up. And so I reached out to him on Instagram and was like, we need to work together. So yeah, it's crazy that was 10 years ago now. I gave a very poor introduction of you and your background and your bio. How do you introduce yourself?
I think that you did as well as can be done, to be honest. I am a jack of all trades. I will tell you this. What I've recently realized, maybe not even that recently, but what I'm recently getting comfortable owning is that the most apropos title that I hold is perspective shifter. That's kind of what I do. I've done it with a camera. I've done it with consulting. I've done it with brand architecture. I've done it with creative direction. I've done it with life coaching. I've done it with coming in and talking to a C-suite in a boardroom and ruffling a lot of feathers. So yeah, the truth is I have done a lot of different things. I've worn a lot of hats in the creative realm for about a quarter century now. 25 years is April. Actually, what's the date? The 4th? April 19th is my official 25 years in business as a creative.
Oh, wow. How come you know the date so specifically? Like, what was that date 25 years ago?
I was in college, and it was the first time somebody paid me to go shoot an assignment. And it was like the beginning of, not only do I love doing this, but I can make money with it. And so, yeah, I just, I've also got a ridiculous memory. Like, I remember everything. So
I will have to write that down because I have a terrible memory when it comes to names and dates. So I will add it to my calendar, my hard copy planner. I will put Damien's 25-year career anniversary.
It's funny. I thought about having doing something special, and I realized how random would it be just to start posting again. I haven't really posted in years. It's probably been 3 years since I've posted anything online. I haven't updated my website since the beginning of COVID, April of 20. It would be very random just to start. I should, there's a lot of shoulds in this business. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But plumber with leaky pipes.
Well, it's something that I'm passionate about because I'm one of those people who never feels like I have a finished product. I always feel like things are a work in progress, and I always have that hesitation of sharing anything. I always have this cringe moment and this comparison moment of what are other people doing versus how is this going to show up. But I think it's just so important to share along the way and to share the highs and lows and to bring that authenticity to the table of the highs and lows, and to lead with vulnerability and just show somebody who's 20 years behind you that, hey, here's how it goes. And I have 20 more years in the game, and I'm still making mistakes. I'm still messing up. I'm still not able to connect my printer to the Wi-Fi today. There's still just stuff that happens where you're just like, why can't I do this? So I think you should start to post again. I would love to see that, actually. You probably have so much content in the can that you've never put out there publicly.
I've mentored a lot of young creatives along the way. And one of the things that was always hysterical is when they would look at a finished shoot with me after we get done, right? We come home, we download it. My process is one where I've always downloaded the images and felt terrible instantly. I hate everything that I'm looking at. And it used to ruin me for days. And then I'd a week later, I'd finally go back and start editing pictures, and it was okay. And then I realized I'm just going to be hypercritical. That's my nature. That's the school that I went to, is hypercritical, very direct, very much, hey, this is just the reality. Take it on the chin, deal with it, and move on. And so I'm hypercritical of my own work. Part of the reason why I don't share as much is because I always love the thing that's in my head that I've yet to create more than I love what I've created already. So there's a piece of that that's there too.
Yeah.
And I would sit down with my assistants or my mentees, whatever role they were in at that time. And we'd start looking through pictures. And, let's just say there's 1,000 pictures from a day of shooting on a commercial shoot. 12 get used. Maybe 6 get used. Maybe if you're building a library, like 18 to 20 get used. And so we're looking at just the tiniest little differences in images. And I had an assistant once say, the amount of fantastic pictures that'll never see the light of the day is like mind blowing. And it really is.
Yeah.
Like I have terabytes full of images that will never see the light of day that could be beautiful and wonderful and used for something, except they don't actually have a purpose other than, hey, that's cool to look at, And so it's really, there is a ton of content. Also, I don't really like walking backwards. I don't really want to go back in time and re-show stuff that isn't what my heart is into right now. So it's tricky.
I'm in that self-editing phase right now, even with this podcast, because what I'm finding is I really enjoy recording the conversations because especially with the people that I'm talking to, I know the people and it's like catching up with old friends. And then when I go to edit it, I am in complete disarray. I'm in that self-critical place. Why am I even doing this? And so what I need to divide the project in half. I need to just record it and then give it to someone to do. So I don't even have to listen to myself and I don't even have to hit that self-critical place because I'm right there with you. I never thought of it as living in the past, but I think of it as, oh my gosh, I'm so cringy and shouldn't be doing this.
Okay. I'm going to speak to this for a second because I think it's essential. I think it's an essential piece of the puzzle. Too often these days, I think that we look for the easy way out. We showcase the hero moments and the fantastic versions. And the best way to learn is to look yourself in the mirror. The best way you can learn how you sound to others is to force yourself to listen back to your conversation in real time, 9.5 or 2 times speed, and hear how you speak and how you pause and where the ums are and all of those things because it makes a difference. And I've been on a journey to, heal myself, make myself better, clear a lot of crap out of the past, the closet, all those things for a while now. What I've found is if there's any uncomfortable feeling, like I run right at it at this point. I want to know faster. I want to dive in now and I want to put it behind me so I can get back to some ease. I'm happy with ease. I like that at this point in my life.
I think I'm taking an opposite approach. I'm definitely band-aiding around the things that are uncomfortable.
Full ostrich, just like head in the sand. I don't want to.
Yes, I have been editing out the likes and the ums, and that's part of this exercise also is just to speak more and to make my thoughts come together in my head real time, faster, better, without the ums, without the likes. And every time I edit, I just think to myself, you are 25 years into your career. Why with the ums? Why with the likes? I have spoken on stage. I have done the things. Why are they still there? So we'll have to come back to any sort of progress I make in this regard. And maybe we'll do an episode a year from now and we'll see where we're at with your process of running straight at your uncomfortableness and then my process of just avoiding it, head in the sand. And we'll see where we're at.
I love it. And I think it's a whole podcast in itself, right? Is the uncomfortable moments and what to pay attention to and where to go or what to say, hey, not right now. Because there's some of that too.
For sure.
We can't handle everything all at once. I want to organize. I'm looking at my desk right now. I want to organize my desk right now. I'm like, oh, there's mess that I want to tend to. Not the time. Like, all right, you have to be able to filter your neuroses a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna come back to your personal development hacks because I love that you're always working on things and you're always in your own brain and trying to improve. But I want to dig into some of your creativity hacks a little bit more because I do think you are one of those people who has a superpower and I want to try to unpack it for the world. So how would you describe your superpower?
I don't know, but at first I just wanted to take like a Superman stance for a second, just because it felt good to hear somebody else say I have a superpower. I'm exceptional with people. That's my superpower, is I listen. What I say, I listen between the lines. People will say something and they might be communicating a piece of what they're trying to get at There's always another layer deeper. And I've learned to listen to what that is, and I've learned to understand what that is. And then I reverse engineer it and learn to speak to it from the brand side or the creative side. And so my superpower is deep empathy. My superpower is an innate and cultivated skill at listening to human beings and understanding the different roles in life that they might be in, whether it be super affluent sitting on their yacht and what they want to be exposed to, what they want to be served, to being homeless and sleeping in their car or not knowing where their next meal is going to come from. And I've been both. And I think that you have to, in a creative realm, you have to tap into what your truth is. My truth is understanding people. That will always be what I lead with.
I really thought you were going to come back to the perspective idea as your superpower. And I really thought you were going to go with something visual, because you have this ability to see things differently and have the sight inputs. So now when you say your superpower is listening and hearing, and then I know you also have a visual superpower, you have some layers of powers going on.
Like my wife says, it's an onion, baby. You got to work your way in, right? Layer by layer, layer by layer. I think that visual artists are always looking to connect in the briefest amount of time possible. With a still image, that's what you're doing. You're taking a fraction of a second and trying to tell a complete story within it. In a painting, you're trying to express an emotion or make somebody feel something by just a static 2-dimensional, maybe slightly 3-dimensional existence. To be able to do that well, you have to first understand your why. And to understand your why, you have to understand yourself or the client's perspective or the version of truth that needs to be communicated. The rest is just decision making. And yes, I have a long history of understanding lighting. I have a deep toolbox to take a picture with, direct a film with, all those things. I understand camera angles and lenses and all the technicalities, all the science behind it, which is just craft. I have that as a tool, but that's something that can be learned. My superpower that's innate to me is on the human side. It's not about the visual as much as it is about the why, what we want somebody to feel. And if we're clear about what we want somebody to feel, then we can make the choices that lead to that result visually, aesthetically. So that's always how I've been informed. When you see me solve a problem quickly with a camera or on set or in a thought process, my first step is, what does this person need to feel? And then I reverse engineer from there.
Are there hacks that you have learned with your brain to either, when you know you need to be in creative mode, when you know you need to collect the inputs creatively, you need to be in that listening state, and then you also need to be able to come up with ideas or come up with visuals or something? Like, are there things that you do routinely that up your creativity?
I think that the connection to creativity is more felt than thought. And so if I find myself thinking a lot about something, I have to find some way to break that cycle. I love to do woodworking. I love to just make a lamp, a cutting board. I made my dining room table. I don't even care if I'm making something that has a purpose. It's just touching something organic and manipulating it, sanding it, shaping it, takes me out of thinking. And more times than not, all creativity needs is space. We try and bottle it up and compress it and go, okay, be creative now. And you can do it easier if you're already in your body. You can do it easier if you're paying less attention to what the brain is thinking and more attention to what the body is feeling. This is me personally, this is my approach. And I think that, again, when I start with what's the end result that I want the target to feel, the rest is just decisions and craft to get there. And so for me, it's the more I stay connected to this kind of pit within my stomach that speaks from there rather than getting into my head. My wife does this like up and down layered, hand signal to me if I'm ever in my head, because I overthink stuff. My brain's a weird trap. So I just stay out of it just as much as possible. When I was younger, my hack, like no joke, was smoke a joint and drink a Red Bull and like fully destroy my body, but take myself out of all reality, and then I'd find it. I don't need to do that anymore. Luckily, I'm healthier than that now. And I truly believe that for a creative to find their process, you have to put judgment aside. We have to say there's no right or wrong way. There's no good or bad version. There's maybe a way to be less self-destructive in the process. And I mean, Hunter S. Thompson, like he lived a life, He got after it. There's a version of truth for everybody, and the access point to their piece of it, I think we just have to accept and judge a little bit. Whatever that is, I think, yeah, for me, it's just trying to stay in my body as much as possible. So I'll go for a run, I'll do a workout, I will, woodworking really helps. I'll go on a hike, I'll play with my kids, anything just to like break the thought process and just get back into it. And usually that's when, those genius quote unquote moments come.
So I know you have your kid with you right now. As they're removing a lot of creative pursuits from schools, how do you as a parent think about instilling creativity in your kids or allowing them to have creative moments?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that my wife and I spend a lot of time trying to figure that part out. We have like designated art time. We have like art things we do together where one person will start a painting or a drawing and the next person will add to it, and we should pass it around to release the attachment to it. I think that helps too. We kind of approach everything creatively. We approach, I don't know, as much as we can from a creative process. My kids collect sticks and rocks and all the things in nature. And we go, okay, what are we going to do with this? We were inspired by it. That's great. What's next? And whether or not there actually is a next or not at their age is less important than just the consideration that there could be, and that to me is kind of where we're starting. My kids also go to a Waldorf school, so there's a little bit more creativity like in their curriculum, saving grace there, even though I prefer that they were homeschooled, but now we're getting off into tangents and, you know me, I'll go for days.
I don't know if I would trust you with homeschooling any children, but they would turn out to be geniuses from an artistic perspective for sure. Would they?
Thank you very much.
Would there be Red Bull cans everywhere? Maybe, but
not just yerba mate, highly caffeinated, but better for you.
I think about this in terms of like, what are the habits I'm passing down to my son? And as you're talking about like getting out of your head and just kind of being where you are. And as much as I haven't intentionally passed on anxiety or like performance anxiety to him, he has it. So whether it's DNA and it's passed through, he has this awareness of like, how is he performing in any given moment? And I really try to have balancing times with him where we talk about, let's just go outside, sit in the grass, let's just be present, let's just breathe. And that's big for him. I don't even call it meditation. I just say like sit outside because he's in Fortnite land most of the time. But he also just has anxiety around school tests and things like that. And I'm like, listen, like at the end of the day, it's school's more about how you learn, and it's about like learning your brain, and that's the most important thing. But it's really hard to get him out of that like must get an A, must do well on whatever state test they're doing to prove whatever about their school quality. I mean, it's just a sad time for creative spirits in the world because all measurement is attached to things that aren't creative, and so then kids are evaluated based on things that are not creative pursuits.
It's going to be hard not to get on a soapbox for this one for me. I'll be honest.
Take a 3-minute soapbox. We're here for it.
I have a gripe with the standardized school system in America. I do. It didn't work for me. It didn't work for my brain. I was bored by it. The system was put in place to teach people how to be good factory workers, how to learn information and access that and complete a task associated with it and not challenge it, ask questions. And I love questions. I love being more engaged in thought and knowledge and all those things. And so my grades were terrible. And I realized very early on that the system was not right for me. Now, my wife, on the other hand, worked wonderfully in the system. She got great grades. She went to Cal. She graduated Cal with high honors. She is an extremely intelligent person, and then met me and went, what? Like, this doesn't compute. It doesn't make sense. So our kids have this balance of somebody who deeply understands the achieving aspect of what is asked of the kids, and somebody who thinks all of it is a bunch of BS, and our children would be much better off if they got to go play by themselves and create and do random things and then slowly learn the knowledge associated with what they were trying to complete. So that's part one, without me getting too aggressive about it. The second part of that is that, we really champion effort in our house. We don't really talk about the outcome. We mention it, we address it, absolutely. And the biggest aspect of things that we focus on is the effort. Did you do your best? Did you try? Did you get tired doing it? Did you exhaust all the resources that you had? You know, that type of conversation to us is way more important for our kids to be reminded of, because the world's going to ask them a bunch of success story questions as they grow up. So there's that. And then I think the last piece of it is simply for the creatives in the world right now, it's also a very wonderful time to be a creative. You know, kids can create an AI. They can take a concept that they paint and then they put that into a thing and evolve it in a way that we could never do 2 years ago, 3 years ago. If we embrace where things are going and we allow our children to interact with it, there's a lot of space for creative expression at this point. Maybe not in the schools as much as it should be. And it's just part of life. You know what I mean? Like, you got to find your way and find your spot and really go for it.
Yeah. I think the schools are going to be so slow on the technology front and in a mode of outlawing ChatGPT instead of, hey, listen, it's out there. Let's learn how to use it as a tool, just like we learned how to use Google as a tool. It is a tool for content creation. Let's learn how it should be implemented into schools now. I think kids who embrace those tools, whether through school or outside of school, they just have such a leg up on everyone because they're so tech savvy, and you can create at such scale. You can get such fast learnings just by doing and building this. And you're talking about 1,000 photos in one photo shoot. They're just able to crank out, like, learn. You get so many reps when you're able to use digital tools.
I think you're very right. And the reps is something that's so crucial, as I keep messing with my setup here because I can't stop looking at the framing and critiquing it. I want to flip my camera over.
You need more podcast reps. So
I do need more podcast reps. This is true.
Okay, I'm gonna throw this out into the world.
Okay.
Damien and I were talking about doing a podcast where we pick a brand and we optimize the brand. We'll just say optimize.
Optimize. Wait. You know what's fun is I flip my camera over. Am I upside down for you now? It doesn't flip.
You're upside down for me.
I kind of want to stay this way, but I feel like that would disturb people, so I'm going to go back.
So we've already talked a little bit about photography, and I think we could talk photography like for a whole podcast, but let's kind of dive into brands and branding. As you are tagged into either building a brand or evaluating a brand, do you have a specific process that you follow, and how much woodworking is involved in that process?
I do have a specific process I follow. It's a loose framework that answers a series of questions that I think are important to answer. And what I'm always looking to do is define what I call the North Star of a brand. It's essentially its purpose, right? Where is this thing going to go and not waver from? What's it going to track towards? What's it going to follow? To get there, you have to understand why it exists. You know, what was the impetus of it? Why, is it solving a problem? Is it just want to be cool? There's lots of different reasons. Just want to make money. It doesn't really matter the why, except that the why is crucial to inform how to move forward. So in figuring out the why, we then get to ask who it's for, right? And in the who it's for, what I'm looking to do is kind of determine the bold statement of the brand. Why this thing? Why is this one cup the best cup? Maybe it's not trying to be the best cup. Maybe it's just trying to be the most affordable cup. Okay, well then that's the reason why. Whatever the bold statement is, I'm always looking for a brand to take a stance, to have some guts, to not try and be for everybody. And so what we're doing is we're looking for the purpose of it. We're looking for what it's always going to say and do, at least a direction it's going to point. And then we start massaging the subtlety of what box does it fit into. I use the car reference all the time with my clients because it's the easiest, quickest way for people to grasp it. Even if you think you haven't been advertised to by car companies, you absolutely have. And it's the quickest way to see that a Toyota markets itself very differently than a Ferrari does. A Jeep is its own box, and so is a Bentley. And who you're speaking to and why you're speaking to them comes with a box to put your brand in, comes with a construct. Now, you can always break those rules, absolutely. However, you have to understand that for a long time now, Americans have been marketed to and sold to in a particular way. So if you switch it up on them, two things can happen. One, you can really make an impact and jar people, and it can be fantastic. And two, they're going to be confused. And anything confusing in branding, advertising, marketing is just a loss unless it's done on purpose to get you to ask a question, follow up, and then then you're playing a different game. The brands that love to play the game where we can seed plant and toy with the audience and get them curious and engaged, like those are super fun. They're just not as common because most brands are trying to make a quick execution and reap a benefit from it, whether it be, sales or followers or whatever it might be. So yeah, that's kind of
Well,
like track
and I think there's the hesitation to take that risk or to take that stand, to use your language, because of cancel culture, because of, we're trying to stay broad with our target audience. And you don't want to alienate people. You don't want to be so bold that it's out of somebody's taste. But I totally agree that, especially with so many brands out there, like basically every single space has so much fragmentation now, with digital being like a primary method that everyone's using to advertise and to put their brands out there. You do have to do something. You have to stand for something, or you stand for nothing.
I always say that I want, and this is where I get a little crass, I'm a little rough around the edges sometimes. I want fuck yeses and fuck nos. And if you're a maybe, I push you towards the no's. I don't want your business if you're a maybe. Because what happens is you get really clear about who's going to be in your corner, who's going to follow you, who's going to like die for your brand. And on the other side, if you push people away, all they're going to do is talk about it. I can't believe they said no to me. Just because I don't believe in X, Y, and Z. Thanks for the free advertising. You just told 5 friends. Of those 5, one of them is my people and they come running towards me. Or you're a maybe and I say, hey, you're not right for us. And you go to crazy efforts to prove how right you are for us. And you buy up all the things and you're a super supporter. Our culture is been taught to be divisive, right? It's Coke and Pepsi. It's my team, your team. It's us and them. It's Democrat, Republican. It's all these very divisive things. So if you play that game of divisiveness, it actually speaks to a normalcy within a consumer brain. Oh, I'm either this or I'm that. Great. So step 1 there. Step 2 is, a very wide net has a very wide weave, meaning you're missing the specific people you're going for. You might catch a bunch of fish, but are they going to keep coming back? I guess fish don't come back. You're going to catch a lot of consumers, but
Yeah.
are they going to keep coming back? I don't want one sales. I want people that love a brand. I want people that want more from a brand and want to keep engaged. I'm interested in working primarily with brands that want the culture, that want a following, that want a family, a tribe, whatever verbiage you want to put on it. What we're really looking for is the diehards for our business, because we are not afraid to say this is what we do excellently. And if you stay to that and don't try and go, oh, well, we also do these other 7 things poorly, chances are you're going to win.
Yeah. And get to that diehard core audience as quickly as possible. I like the analogy of, the net, because you want to catch the core first. You don't want to start so broad and then try to back into who are we talking to here.
Give me a ladle to start. Give me just I just want it. These people are going to always be there. It's like making the stock of a soup. You got to have a really strong base before you start diluting it, before you start adding in all these other things, and then people will learn to love it as it grows, but you got to start with something pure.
Is there a brand that you are watching right now that you think is doing a great job at that?
Yeah, I love that you asked this question, because it's such a great question to ask. And I hate this question because no, I don't watch brands. And that's like a half truth. I pay attention to what brands are doing. I see advertising that is really resonating and striking. I see moments in culture that stand out. I am also, I'm Gen X. I am a little disgruntled with where things are in some capacity. I don't like the clickbaity culture. I don't like how much, skin is populated on our social media just to grab attention. It bothers me. And you look at a movie that has no problem putting John Cena on stage fully nude, covering himself with an envelope, which, by the way, was one of the better moments of the show because it was hysterical and he played it wonderfully, but then also ignores the potency and power of Barbie and what the true message was, and nominates the guy of Barbie for an Oscar for the song. What a slap in the face to what the movie really stood for. And so I get fired up about brands that do good and I get fired up about brands that are like communicating clarity. So like the three things I always measure a brand by is clarity, cohesiveness, and consistency. If they're constantly clear on a regular basis, and everywhere you look, it reinforces that message, that brand is going to win their audience. Where it gets diluted is, they go, oh, well, this platform needs a slightly different thing, which they all do, but then they change verbiage too much and it doesn't feel the same. Or they don't take a certain aspect of it seriously, or they go, oh yeah, just throw something together. Oh, we got a social team. They're just going to do some stuff. No. Terrible. Be consistent, be cohesive everywhere. And just, again, that bold message with clarity, you're going to win your audience.
You started to kind of go to this topic, so I'm just going to go there. You posted or reposted on Facebook the other day something that I thought was so interesting. And I'm just going to read it because I want to dive into it a little bit with you. And it's things that we've talked about before, but I think it probably needs to be talked about more. This Facebook post: men need to sit with men that have healed perspectives of women. Women need to surround themselves with women who have a healed perspective of men. Conversations are different. The energy is different.
What do you want to know?
I want your 3-minute soapbox on this topic.
I think that for a very long time, men and women have been told how they're supposed to be in our culture, and we have become some very confused version of masculine and feminine energy, where we look at it again as a divided thing. We look at the opposition, the gap in pay. So we look at maternity leave, paternity leave. We look at what it's like for a woman in the workforce to even get pregnant, what that means for her career. We look at the 50s gender roles of the guy's going to go, to work and drink at work and come home, and his wife better be perfectly dressed and the table perfectly set with his favorite meal. And it's just all such bullshit. The truth is that there's masculine and feminine energy within all of us. Every single human has both. And when we start looking at the beautiful balance of those two together, both within ourselves and in community, I stop looking at a woman that I'm sitting with as having a problem or being wrong, and I start seeing her superpowers and why she's right and why that's a beautiful addition, and vice versa. Traditionally, masculine energy is the container for feminine energy to be wild and free and spontaneous within. But without both, you have an empty bowl and you have sporadic energy. Neither of those things function as well as when they're put together. So I think, you take that and add it to our current culture of boys becoming men who are told not to approach a woman that they're interested in, but they also are supposed to tell them that they're interested, but in a way that's respectful, but only if they're over 6'1" and make $500,000 a year, which is less than 1% of men in America. It's confusing for young men out there. And women are torn between being a strong, independent woman, boss bitch label that we put on people, and when do they allow themselves to be soft? When do men allow themselves to be soft? When do men allow themselves to be strong and powerful? And when can a woman hear when the man is tired of doing that? A healed perspective for men and women is really just a way of saying, you're looking at a human being across from you instead of a label. And I think that the more we do that across the board in life, the better the world gets.
We are recording this in early April, and we're coming off of Women's History Month. And I feel a lot of obligation to speak as a woman in business and to represent women in business, where I kind of planted my flag for this month. And I'm always evolving on this topic, but I kind of summed it up as I want integration as opposed to isolation. I think there's a lot of powerful female focused groups right now, which is amazing that women are coming together and supporting each other and trying to push topics forward. However, we will all make better and faster progress if we come together and have these conversations from both sides, from both perspectives. And especially as a woman in business, as I think about my career, let's say 90% of it, I'm reporting to men, I'm mentored by men, I'm pulled through the system by men, I'm taught the game by men. And so how can I, on Women's History Month, turn my back on those men who have done great things for me in my career and say, oh no, this is all about the women? And so it's something that I debate about a lot. I never want to just sit at a woman's table. I want to sit at a table that's full of leaders. I want to sit at a table full of people who are healed or are healing or are exploring these topics and have conversations together. Like, I want to help address the lack of funding for female founders. 2% of funding goes to female founders, and that's not enough. But I don't think the solution to that is to have a woman's table and have dollars from that woman's table going to women-owned businesses. I think it has to be integrated together. We have to collectively work through what is the evolution of the patriarchal system that we're all living in.
I mean, look, well said. I agree with you. I think that why on earth in any, like, let's just focus on business for a second, okay? Why in any business setting would you want to limit potential and possibility? Like, that's all that excluding any demographic, any group, that's what that yields. I want to know more. I want to know I want to be informed by everybody, every gender, every non-gender. I want to be informed by every race. I want to be informed by every age. I want to be informed by humanity, because everybody's got something to add to whatever you're creating. So to isolate, I think it dilutes the potential. You're talking about like the importance of mixing it up, not just having, women's side, men's side, race side, whatever. And we lived in a patriarchal society for so long where there was a lot of oppression to a number of different minority groups. I'm a white man in America. I'm the default, which is ridiculous. It's ridiculous that just because I was born a man and just because I happen to look more white than anything else, even though I have a ton of Middle Eastern background from Syria, I'm the default in this country. You don't say the white guy who did a thing. You'll say, oh, the woman or the black man or the, Latino or whatever. We label everybody but the white man. We need to shift that. We need to have that pendulum swing, and pendulum swings come with overcorrection. They do. The ones who are ahead of the game and stay ahead of the game are the ones that go, hey, we need to balance this and find the sweet spot that works for us. So there are certain groups that I think should be just women owned and women funded, and mainly their clientele is for women. And I also think that the majority of business, the majority of life needs to be mixed up. I was lucky enough to grow up in a melting pot where I was one of 6 white kids to graduate in a graduating class of 5. I loved that. I loved that I didn't understand that like diversity was something you needed to include, because I was just the minority growing up. And then I moved to Illinois for a little bit and was like, I freaked out. It was the most white people I'd seen in one place at one point in time. Like, I walked in the cafeteria and I was just like, what is going on? We need to correct. We do. That you can't argue that. We've gone too far. We need to also be aware of the balance and what we're missing by not including some of those voices. And I think that that's where we're right at that line of maybe going a little bit too far. And look, I'm a white guy in America who can't get certain jobs because I don't meet a diversity quotient. That sucks, and I'm okay with it. Like, it is what it is, right? Like, it sucks that any person should be excluded because of their age, gender, or race, period. Sexual orientation, all the things that we judge people for, which is, in my opinion, just ridiculous. I think the overcorrection is necessary. I think that being aware of when to include those voices and when to say, hey, I couldn't be here without, is essential. I would never be in the position I'm in without very strong, intelligent, powerful women in my corner. Absolutely. No question about it.
Yeah, I think as a woman who's in business and knowing that we're 1970s was the first time women could have their own bank accounts, like something like that. Like, we're still so early in all of
crazy.
this.
Is that the fact? Like, is that when it could be? I feel like it was earlier, but not by much, probably.
Right. Like, it wasn't that long ago. And so to kind of circle back to like the need to put things out there and the need to share the journey, I feel that's the only part that gets me over the hump of my self-critical nature is I just need to show what this looks like as a woman building businesses on my own. I don't have like a spouse that I'm leaning on to do this. Like, this is me building things, and here's what I'm learning, and then leave it better for the next generation. I don't think it's going to be solved necessarily in our generation, but it's like, can we make progress and pass it along a little bit better than it was handed to us?
That's like the people who plant trees today, knowing they'll never sit in the shade, right? Like
Yeah.
it's important. It's important, I believe, to make the world a better place than we left it, to participate in progress. It's inevitable. It's just a matter of how long it takes. And I think
Yeah.
it's great that you are doing what you're doing. I think it's great that you have women run businesses and own businesses and all those things. And, I'm happy to say that I help participate in helping support that. So it's both.
For sure. And you're one of the first 5 men I've had on the podcast. So, you'll go down in history, really.
I was feeling historic, so thank you for pointing that out. That's great.
You are special. You, white man, Damien, are special.
Perfect.
We
Thanks
talked
for all
early.
the labels. That's great.
I just wanted to make sure if society hasn't told you enough that you're special, you are special.
Society definitely does not tell men enough that they're special. That's for sure.
I know.
So I appreciate it.
So I felt like you needed that reminder.
Thank you.
I know you spend a lot of time on your own personal development, personal growth. What are the things that are top of your mind right now? Like, what are you working on?
Oh man, like this is its own podcast in itself. This is maybe I'm discovering that the reason people have midlife crisis is because they become very aware of the fact that they don't know who they are, because we're just old enough to recognize that most of what we've done in life is because of somebody else's narrative that we just followed until this point where we start questioning everything and recognizing that I don't want to be the version of human that my mom defined because she had issues with men and never healed those. And I don't want to be the version of myself because my grandfather was first generation American and grew up in a very strict household with not a lot of food around. So our eating habits are now defined by like, we have to clear our plate because my grandfather grew up in the Depression and learned to protect his food. We start questioning all these things. And where does it come from? I think we have to question all of who we are. And in this midlife stage, we start recognizing that, let me be clearer than that. I didn't fully recognize it on my own. My wife had to reflect it back to me and be like, D, you're not doing this well. Like this sucks to live with. This sucks to face. And I could argue it and fight it, which is what I would have done most of my life. Or I can look at it and go, oh, those are pieces. I don't want my family to feel that way. I don't want to be received that way. So this line between holding on to our identity, my personality as this, I'm a that, whatever, versus how I want to be received creates this very interesting rift, this very interesting divide of I don't actually know how to act in certain situations because my default is something that I don't want to perpetuate, but I don't have the tools to figure out how I want to step forward. So it's this almost daily dance of pausing and checking yourself and saying, hey, stop there for a second, respond, don't react, and be clear about the information you want your kids to hear and how you want to do it. Like I'm still thinking about the fact that I was just short with my son. Like I was direct and I was clear, and I want to be kinder than I just was. Mm-hmm. And I'm frustrated because I have an important thing that I'm doing right now and it's being interrupted. Does it matter? Like really? Do I want my kid thinking, oh, they have to be on eggshells because dad's doing an important thing? Or should he just be able to live a little? Like, these are the things that I am constantly challenging and constantly checking myself on. And it leads to a crazy amount of confusion. And so when you talk about like, I have a superpower or like, where's my area of genius or like, I'm special for whatever, it actually does help because it reminds me that there's pieces of me that I still love and that don't need to be changed, that I'm comfortable with not needing to be changed. And then there's other aspects that are just like, man, I've got shovel in hand. I'm digging daily for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things to love is just that in that conversation with yourself, and so many people aren't exploring it or are just truly doing the ostrich, like head in the sand kind of move, and just give you flowers for not just like vulnerable, but you've always been somebody who's dug and tried to get better and shared and learned and evolved. And I've just enjoyed that about our interactions over the years. One of the things that we talk about pretty consistently on this podcast of 7 episodes. So when you say consistently, like, still new, um, is comeback season. So tell me about a time when you might have been on a low, and when was it? What were you doing? And what were some of the things that you did to get yourself out of that space?
It's a very interesting question to answer right now because I honestly feel like I'm on a low right now. I moved my family to the middle of nowhere so that we could heal, so that I could heal, so I could spend the time doing this work of self-improvement and progression and defining who we are and become a better father and a better husband and all those things. And I've let a lot of work go because I wanted to be here and home. And so now I'm at the place where I have to start generating more income again. I have to start working more again. And I'm coming into this recognizing that I've always been word of mouth. I've always been, hey, work with Damien because he's great at XYZ. Or, hey, somebody told me I should call you. I have no idea why we're on the phone, but let's figure it out. And I'm just not around that many people anymore. And I'm stepping back into a world and a realm where I've been doing this for a long time and I've not been good about, you talk about the archive, like I've not been good about capturing the final product so I could have it, so I could show it. Oh, here it is with all the graphics on it. Here's the full thing. Here's the package. It was a mistake. I made a mistake in not doing that. And so I'm trying to recreate a portfolio that is more idea-based than visual-based because I don't have those things documented over the past 25 years, the past 10 years I've been in creative direction. It's tough to start here knowing that I can go help, somebody sell widgets and make a decent living doing it. I just don't really have an interest in that. I want to work on projects that make the world a better place. I want to work with people who are changing things for the better. I want to work on, I've thought about starting a nonprofit just to help other nonprofits get their message out there because that's the piece I do really well. So the low now, what am I doing to get out of it? Is I'm recognizing I can only do one day at a time. I can only deal with one coughing kid at a time. I can only deal with a certain amount of laundry every day. I can only deal with a certain amount of screen time every day. I want to still have dinners with my family and I don't want to tuck away in an office and disappear. I'm recognizing that the right thing will happen when it needs to happen. And I'm also working towards making that happen as much as possible. And I think I have to remind myself that like the measurement is effort, just like with my kids. The measurement is effort. Am I putting in the effort? Yes. Great. Am I spending too much time on social media? Then not so great, So as long as I'm putting in the effort, then it's just one single step at a time. And I'm also starting a company that's focused on like being a champion for the struggles in life. Because I think we've talked about all the, fake version of here's my highlight reel too much. And now it's time to just say like, let that pendulum swing a little bit, It's a little over the line. It's a little in your face struggling on purpose because it needs to shake things up a little bit. And I think that also feels like a healthy outlet for me of where that needs to go, where that energy needs to go. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. Did that answer it well enough? I don't feel like I just rambled about my problems for 5 minutes, but
I appreciate you sharing that. And I've had a couple of comeback seasons in my time. And I would say I'm in a comeback season right now also. And the way that I define it is not necessarily like gloom and doom everywhere. I feel very connected to my purpose right now. I'm not, financially where I was 2 years ago, or like I can't find an investor to get this concept off the ground. Like, so it's always layers to life. And so then there's layers of like, where are you winning and where are you not? And one of the ways that I'm trying to navigate my comeback season is to have moments of gratitude for the layers that are firing, and doing this podcast is kind of one of those ways, just to recognize that I have amazing people in my network and to catch up with people and to have vulnerable conversations with people and to give it all away, for free, and to like pay it forward in that regard. So in that way, it's that's a shining moment. And then there's just other things that are dark, and I think it's just always in some way, like every day has its own, like here was the high, here was the low. Then it ends up being this like soup that comes together. The last few years have felt on a whole like more of a low than they have been a high. And so I would say I'm like in a comeback season, but then I'm also like there's certain things that are clicking. And so we'll all come together and click on your side too, where okay, the geography is clicking. Like that's great. The woodworking clicking, and you just start to build from like what is good, what is working right now. And sometimes it's like the smallest things, but then you just start to stack the wins together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that everybody disappeared and got jumbled up when COVID hit. So we're all coming back from that still. And it's only 4 years ago. You know?
Yeah.
If you look at like the trajectory of any business, like that's just like one turn of the clock, really. Like, oh, okay, now you're starting to see what things are.
I was gonna pivot to a different topic. But
is it because we're talking about your comeback season, so you got uncomfortable and we had to change topics?
No, I'm unfortunately very comfortable in my own comeback seasons. I feel very at home in these reputation era moments where I don't trust anyone and I just go and build and like head down and go and 2 years later emerge and things are back on the top of the world.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's all different ways of doing it. Again, I think that judging the process or comparing the process is a crazy thing to do. I think it's very destructive. We're all there's very few people on earth that are not trying to do their best in any moment. And we can pawn that off as laziness or bad habits. We could pawn that off as, hyperactive attention in certain areas. We can pawn that off into all sorts of different labels. It doesn't really matter. What matters is like, I can't think of a day in my life where I intentionally didn't do my best. And so if the best doesn't lead to a same result, like that's okay. It's still what you had to give. And I think that's the important part.
I love tying it back to the effort. And I love that you're trying to bring that to life with your parenting too.
So here, ironically enough, I have a Coach D cup from a kids soccer team that I coached a couple of years ago. And these 3 rules started there and have kind of just brought themselves to our family. And the 3 rules are: rule number 1 is be a good human. Rule number 2 is effort. And rule number 3 is teamwork. And the kids, of course, ask, well, what about fun? We go, if you do those 3 things, you'll have fun. And they go, what about winning? Well, if you do those 3 things, you'll win a lot too. And then about halfway through the season, we clue them in that it's not just for soccer, it's for everything. If you're a good person first and you put in effort and you rely on your team and you're a good teammate to whoever, your family, your parents, your classmates, your whatever, your business, it's hard to lose at life. And I think that is something that is, rather than measuring results, back to the school conversation, rather than measuring results, if we focus on measuring that connection and that intentional output and the effort we put behind it, I think we'd all view the world a little bit differently.
I love that. You heard it here first from Coach D. Is there anything that we have not talked about that you want to leave in the world besides your 3 rules from Coach D?
I mean, probably. You could pick a topic. I'll go for days, but I don't know. Did we answer all the questions on the sheet? Did we do that already?
We did. My handwritten,
okay.
my cheat sheet.
I want to know what's next for you.
I am very happy in my marketing agency, Sizzle Society, working with brands, working with franchises, working in fitness. It's as if I spent a bit of time girl bossing very close to the sun, got burned, and now I'm coming back to just a core competency of this is what I do best. This is my superpower place, and reset, like be there, live there for a bit, and then branch back out. So that said, I'm staying open, I'm staying nimble, and as always, scrappy. And I think the right things are going to emerge from that.
Sounds good. I like it. I do have an answer for you. You said like if there's anything else that I could leave.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think there's three things in life that I've learned over the past number of years that are like true life hacks for anybody. And I don't know why these aren't given full advertising campaigns like during the Super Bowl, but they should. And it's gratitude, forgiveness, and contentment. And I think they all work together If when you start forgiving yourself for all the labels and all the wrongs and all the things, and forgive others around you, recognizing they're just other human beings doing their best, and you add that to a little bit of gratitude for what's right in front of you, what you can appreciate daily, you find contentment. And I used to have such a negative connotation with contentment, like aggressively was against it, like, oh, you're just not living up to your potential, you're not trying hard enough, you're not da-da-da. And over time, I've realized it just means that you're comfortable where you are. And the ability to sit anywhere and just be comfortable and not feel the need to keep pushing or stress about what was or all those things. It's just, man, that's a life hack for sure. So yeah, that's probably the last piece I'd want to put on the table.
I love it. And I have so much gratitude to you for working through this podcast experience with me. And this is me trying. I just appreciate you as a collaborator over time, and I appreciate you as a friend over time. And thank you so much for joining me today on this episode of the Society Pod.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. I love the fact that we're still connected after you slid into my DMs forever ago.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Society Pod.